The leaders of the Virginia Company, a joint stock company in charge of the Jamestown enterprise, were for the most part wealthy and well-known commercial and military adventurers, eager to find new outlets for investment. During the first 2 years of its existence, the Virginia colony under the Charter of 1607 proved an extraordinary bad investment. This was principally due to the unwillingness of the early colonizers to do the necessary work of providing for themselves and to the chronic shortage of capital to supply the furniture. A new charter in 1609 significantly broadened membership in the Virginia Company, thereby temporarily increasing the supply of capital at the disposal of its directors. But most of the settlers continued to act as though they expected the Indians to provide for their existence, an issue that the Indians fiercely rejected. As a result, the enterprise still failed to yield any profits, and the number of investors again declined. The Crown issued a third charter in 1612, authorizing the company to institute a lottery to raise more capital for the floundering enterprise. In that same year, John Rolfe harvested the first crop of a high-grade and therefore potentially profitable strain of tobacco. At about the same time with the arrival of Sir Thomas Dale in the colony as governor in 1611, the settlers gradually began to practice the discipline necessary for their survival, though at an enormous personal cost. Dale carried with him the laws divine, moral and martial, which were intended to supervise nearly every aspect of the settlers' lives. Each person in Virginia, including women and children, was given a military rank, with duties spelled out in many detail. Penalties imposed for violating these rules were severe. Those who failed to obey the work regulations were to be forced to lie with neck and heels together all night for the first offense, whipped for the second, and sent to a year's service in English galleys, convict ships, for the third. The settlers called hardy protest the harshness of the code, for that might be deemed slander against the company, an offense punishable by service in the galleys or by death. Dale's code brought order to the Virginia experiment, but it hardly served to attract new settlers, increasing incentive to the company, beginning in 1618, offered 50 acres, about 20 hectares of land to those settlers who could pay their transportation to Virginia and the promise of 50 acres after 7 years of service to those who could not pay this passage. Concurrently, the new governor of Virginia, Sir George Yardley, issued a call for the election of representatives to a House of Burgesses, which was to convene in Jamestown in July 1619. In its original form, the House of Burgesses was little more than an agency of the governing board of the Virginia Company, but it would later expand its powers and prerogatives and became an important force for colonial self-government. Despite the introduction of these reforms, the years from 1619 to 1624 proved fatal to the future of the Virginia Company. Epidemics, constant warfare with the Indians, and internal despots took a heavy toll on the colony. In 1624, the Crown finally revoked the charter of the company and placed the colony under royal control. The introduction of royal government into Virginia, while it was to have important long-range consequences, did not produce an immediate change in the character of the colony. The economic and political life of the colony continued as it had in the past. The House of Burgesses saw its future under the Royal Commission in 1624 was uncertain. continued to meet on an informal basis. By 1629, it had been officially re-established. The Crown also grudgingly acquiesced to the decision of the Virginia settlers to continue to direct most of their energies to the growth and exportation of tobacco. In 1630, the Virginia colony, while not prosperous, at least was showing signs that it was capable of surviving without royal subsidy. Maryland, Virginia's neighbor to the north, was the first English colony to be controlled by a single proprietor rather than by joint stock company. Lord Baltimore, George Calvert, had been an investor in a number of colonizing schemes before being given a grant of land from the Crown in 1632. Baltimore was given a sizable grant of power to go along with his grant of land. He had control over the trade and the political system of the colony so long as did nothing to deviate from the laws of England. Baltimore's son Cecilius Calvert took over the project at his father's death and promoted a settlement at Mary Street on the Potomac, supplied in part by Virginia. The Maryland colonists managed to sustain their settlement in modest fashion from the beginning. As in Virginia, however, the early 17th century settlement in Maryland was often unstable and unrefined, composed overwhelmingly of young single male, many of them indentured servants. It lacked the stabilizing force of a strong family structure to temper the rigors of life in the wilderness. The colony was intended to serve at least two purposes. Baltimore, a Roman Catholic, was eager to found a colony where Catholics could live in peace, but he was also eager to see his colony yield him as large as profit as possible. From the outset, Protestants outnumbered Catholics, although a few prominent Catholics tended to own an inordinate share of the land in the colony. Despite this favoritism in the area of land policy, Baltimore was for the most part a good and fair administrator. Following the accession of William and Mary to the English throne, however, control of the colony was taken away from the Calvert family and entrusted to the royal government. Shortly thereafter, the Crown decreed that Anglicanism would be the established religion of the colony in 1715, after the Calvert family had renounced Catholicism and embraced Anglicanism. The colony reverted back to a proprietary form of government.